Okay, good morning, everyone, to another fantastic WTM talk. My name is Maka. I'm actually a blogger at An Adventurous World, and today we're going to be discussing why you shouldn't put all of your eggs into one basket. We have two amazing experts on the panel today. Most of you know Michael Ball. He is the co-founder of Traverse, which is a fantastic blogging conference. If you hadn't heard about it before, you should definitely check it out. I guess Michael's always been a huge pioneer for the blogging industry. You know, like 5 years ago, he really put himself in this position of why, brands should work with bloggers, and he really was an advocate for that. And now he runs a couple of conferences, both Traverse and Keyframe, his new video conference next year, and he now works directly with bloggers. And then the other expert is Molly Bylot. Molly is a bit of a blogging extraordinaire. She runs Where's Molly, which is a fantastic blog, very visual, very fun. She's big on YouTube. She's big on Instagram. She's a GoPro ambassador. She runs Where's Molly's Global Travelers, which is basically an adventure tour company taking some of her fans on amazing adventures around the world. So she's going to come up today first and talk about why you shouldn't put all of your eggs in one basket. So if you could put your hands together for Molly, and then we're going to carry on from there.
Thank you. Am I on? I'm on. Hi. Thank you for that, Maka. So my name is Molly, and this is my blog, Where's Molly? So I'm going to be talking to you today about why you shouldn't necessarily put your eggs in one basket when it comes to social media platforms, and that's in building your brand and in building campaigns. Do I have a clicker? Is this the clicker? I haven't used one of these in a while. There we go. Okay, so as the influencer, why shouldn't you put all your eggs in one basket? And for me, that comes down to a few things. One, I think about things like, which platform's my platform? For example, my blog is owned by myself, whereas I always do bear in mind that Facebook, Instagram, etc., it's somebody else's business. So whilst I use every single platform, I use Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, I do place most focus on my blog. So as an influencer, whether you're starting out or whether you're in your career, in the height of your career, I certainly still reflect on what platform feels most natural to me. I think you can make a success out of any platform, but you've got to be 100% in it. You've got to be really passionate about it. I certainly have more focus on Instagram and the visual aspects. I'm not a huge Twitter fan, but I still use it. But I would say I definitely put more focus on the ones that feel most natural to me. I use YouTube, but for YouTube for me is quality over quantity. I'm not a vlogger. I don't post any set schedules, but I love creating visuals. I love making videos. So I kind of draw on my talents and where I feel most natural, because I feel if I'm natural and I'm enjoying it, that's going to be completely transparent through my content and to my readers. Give each platform a different purpose. I'm going to come on to this on the next slide. So if you're going to use your time on more than one platform, make sure that each platform has a different voice, has a different message. And I always like to think of said reader. Why are they coming to my Twitter? Why are they coming to my Instagram? Why would they come to my Twitter and come to my Facebook? Because if I'm going to put my time and efforts into these platforms, I want to make sure they're delivering something different, and there's a reason for said reader to go to more than one platform, and for my time to have been worth investing in more than one platform. Of course, on top of that, you have obviously the fact of reaching different audiences on the different platforms. So know your audience, know your interaction. So when you're working with a brand, said brand comes to me and they say, we want to run a Twitter campaign, and it's going to be for a new set of hiking shoes that's come, a pair of hiking shoes. For me, I could just say yes, and I could just accept the campaign, but I know my audience, and as I've just said, Twitter isn't a huge platform for me. I certainly use it. I share my blog posts, but I know that if a pair of hiking shoes was coming out, the best way for me to kind of pass that on to my audience and display these shoes to my audience would be, for example, Instagram stories, shooting them live on an adventure and including them in Instagram posts, including them in my blog. So through your career, you kind of take note of where your audience is most receptive, what platforms are most receptive. And you know where your audience interact best, be it with a product or be it on a platform. So when you're planning a campaign and a brand emails you or a brand emails me, always speak up. This is one bit of advice, because there's nothing more satisfying at the end of a campaign is delivering results. And you know your brand better than anyone else. No matter what brand comes to you and kind of tries to dictate what platform they think it should go on. Obviously, there's truth in what they're saying as well, but I always stick to your guns, stay true to what you know, and stay true to what you know your audience loves. That's key for me. As the brand, I know Michael is going to go into this a little bit more on coming from a brand perspective and how to build your campaign from the brand side. But I do also take this into account when I'm planning a campaign with a brand. Mostly the long-term, short-term goals. So, for example, if a brand comes to me, for example, I did a campaign with Jack Wills recently, and they wanted to boost their sales for their big sale that was happening. So for me, I automatically think, for quick drive of sales, it's going to be Instagram. It's going to be, I proposed, I think, Instagram posts and Instagram stories, so the quick swipe up links and the more disposable content that's going to drive those sales quickly. In terms of a blog post, for me, that wouldn't work for my channels. I'm not a fashion blogger, so doing a whole blog post on Jack Wills, on their sale, it's got no longevity to it. They need the sales now. In 2 weeks, the sale will be over. And so bear that in mind when you're building a campaign. Think about what platform it suits best, and whether your goals are short-term or long-term with the product or service in question. Who's the influencer as well? Get to know the influencer. I think Michael's got this in his PowerPoint as well, but get to know where their platforms perform best. Ask them questions and see beyond the immediate numbers. This is a huge thing, I think, in travel, seeing beyond the immediate numbers. I think it's very easy to be driven by, within a week, this post got 100,000 views, this did that. And I know a lot of brands have to do reports, and they have to deliver these reports to someone more senior. But especially with travel, I believe a lot of it is about planting seeds. I use that term a lot when I'm talking to brands. For example, I did a campaign with Visit England a couple of years ago, and I did a road trip with a vintage VW camper and went through Cornwall, and I created blog posts and Instagram and all the platforms socially. And I still now get messages from people that have said, sorry, this is really puffy, isn't it? Down a bit, sorry. I still get messages from people now saying, I've just watched your video and I've just booked it. And I've just booked a camper van. So that's 2 years on. I also know that if Visit England had looked at my numbers on YouTube a week after posting my video, they would have seen, a couple of hundred, couple of thousand views. Now the combined views are at 150,000 on YouTube. So for me, it's about creating that content that's it's long-standing. It's going to be relevant now. It's going to be relevant in the future. And for me, that's YouTube. So I won't accept a campaign, for example, on YouTube. I think I had a beauty campaign come through a couple of weeks ago, and it was about an epilator, I think. And for me, obviously, it has its place on YouTube for beauty bloggers. But for me, that content, it doesn't serve a purpose long-term in terms of my travel audience. So things like that, you've got to be really careful, I think, as an influencer, to stick to your guns, know what's going to go down well. I know that it was a good campaign, but my audience wouldn't have received it well. It probably wouldn't have got the views, and I wouldn't have delivered the results. So in that case, it's always good as well to pass on campaigns that you know in your gut aren't right. Sorry, I'm trying to get through quite a lot here, and try not to keep gone too many tangents. So this, for example, this is just a rundown of my platforms. So my main source of information, my main platform that I put most of my time and efforts into is my blog. So it's got the full-length articles, the long-standing, timeless travel resource. So I might post on Instagram, Twitter, Instagram Stories, and Pinterest, but the main bits of information and the extended pieces are on my blog. YouTube, as I've just mentioned, the timeless, informative videos, and for me, it's quality over quantity. Instagram is all about the tasters. It's the blog and YouTube teasers and the more disposable content. I will show you an example of how I try and make it less disposable on the next slide. But Instagram, you know, when you go on someone's profile, unless it's like someone you're stalking, you don't really scroll right down. You see what's there, you take it for what it is, you want to see the live adventure. And so I use Instagram in that sense. To swipe up to YouTube videos, swipe up to see more, and then link to the blog and YouTube, which, yeah. Instagram stories, again, it's like the most live platform for me. If someone wants to see exactly what I'm up to, they want to see the details, they want to see what it's really like to be in a certain place or a country, that's Instagram. And I go into more detail on things like beauty and little details. So for example, that beauty campaign could go in my Instagram stories because, you know, true, I might use an epilator, doesn't mean I'll create a YouTube video about it. Twitter, again, links to blogs. So I always, whenever I do a blog, it always goes through to Twitter, but I don't necessarily keep super active on Twitter. It tends to be one that's always included in campaigns, so I kind of keep it alive for that reason. And then Pinterest is a big one for me. It's a huge driver of traffic. I only started this about 18 months ago. Does anyone here use Pinterest? How many influencers have we got? Perfect. Yeah, and do you all use Pinterest? Yeah, so Pinterest, I didn't really see it. I kept reading articles that were like, use Pinterest, use Pinterest. And so I invested that extra bit of time, because all of this is so time-consuming, and you don't think to do that extra bit of effort, but with Pinterest, it's definitely paid off. I'll show you some, I've got some examples, but some vertical pins. So with every blog post at the bottom, there'll be a pin-friendly pin. I'll show you in a minute. But basically, if you go on Pinterest and someone comes across my pin, with a couple of photos from the trip and a blog post title, they can click on it and it will drive them to that blog post. So it's another way to drive traffic, and I know that I certainly use Pinterest quite a lot when I'm planning my travels. So yeah, that's one of the biggest drivers of traffic to my blog now. So if you haven't got on the Pinterest bandwagon, I highly recommend it. So this is just a little run through of my channels. So here's my blog, and this is what it looks like when you go on the homepage. You've got my recent adventures, so you can see my latest kind of trips and travels, and then you scroll down, you can go to the most popular sections of content. We've got New Zealand, London, Australia, and backpacking. So you click through there, and it's, with my blog, I redesigned it about a couple of months ago, and it's all about navigation for me. So a post that I wrote 4 years ago, for me, I probably created it in a timeless kind of environment, and I want it to be found. I don't want it to be in the depths of my archives. So I redesigned it to bring everything to the forefront of the readers as they're going through my blog. So we've also got the featured posts. I change these weekly, which is kind of, these ones I think I've put up the Christmas. This is coming into winter now, so things that are relevant to the time. And links through to my YouTube. So it's all integrated. All my platforms are integrated, and I think it's important to not put your eggs in one basket and use one platform, because they all work so well together. This is Instagram. So again, you can see this is Canada, so you've got the Canada kind of colors, and Croatia. So that, again, it's a very live feed. This is Snapchat and Instagram stories. So here's an essential oil that I was using a couple of weeks ago. So details like that, I wouldn't necessarily do a blog post on. But it's relevant, and people kind of enjoy those little extra bits of detail. There's the Jack Wills campaign that I did. That was a story that was included in that campaign, where you swipe up and it takes you straight to the product link. And yeah, some food and bits like that. And just general enjoying myself on my adventures. Twitter, again, I don't use it that much, but this is an example of some of the details. So I'll post a blog post link so you can find it. I'll use the hashtags. It's pretty self-explanatory. I'm sure you've all, I think, probably used Twitter before. And YouTube, again, navigation is key for me, so I put them into categories so that if you're going to a certain place or a certain location, you can find those videos very easily, because I know how quickly we like to find content these days. We've got a very short attention span, so navigation is key on all platforms for me. Pinterest, these are the pins that I was just talking about. So I use a website called Canva to create these. You create a template, and then every time you do a blog post, I just drag in some of the maybe key photos from the trip, put the title of the blog post in, and then I pin it to Pinterest. Yeah. Again, Facebook. These are some examples of posts that I put on Facebook. can just be a photo, can be an embedded video. And for example, this is a really good way that I use platforms, I think, to my advantage is I will post a video on Facebook, so it's on that platform for those readers, but then I embed that video into a blog post. So not only are people getting that video on one platform, it's been integrated into another platform. And the same with YouTube. But if something's a little bit more, say, for example, that beauty campaign, I could have done a video on Facebook, because YouTube hasn't got enough longevity for me in my platform, but I'd have put it on Facebook, and I can still embed a video into my blog post. So if there was a blog post and someone needed a visual explanation of how it works, they'd also have that. I did some examples. I don't actually know what we're doing for time. How are we doing for time? Okay? How long have I got? 5? I'm going to show you an example of an effective way of using all the platforms when doing a campaign. So, for example, I work with a lot of tourism boards. And earlier in the year, I did a campaign, or did a project with Visit Finland, our Finland. So this is an example of how I run it from start to finish. So I went on the trip, and I went out for 4 days to North Karelia, and I logged it on Instagram. So that is, as I said, my most live platform, the place where you can really get in and on the adventure with me. So I was posting photos like this when I was there, on my grid, and then on stories as well. Now, something I do, because I take so much pride and I put so much effort into my work and my art, it kind of gets quite frustrating that Instagram is so disposable, and that photos I spent hours thinking or creating or planning or executing are scrolled past, and they're dead in a few weeks. So something I did a couple of years ago to try and keep them alive is create these hashtags. So hashtag Molly in, and then I'll put Molly in Finland, Molly in Canada, and then I'll include it in the posts, so that if those posts come up anywhere and someone wants to see more from the trip instantly, they can click through to the hashtag, and they'll get this display of all the images from that trip. So I even use it now. I use that hashtag in stories if I want people, or encouraging people to go and look at that trip. Or if I think I've just posted another couple of photos from this trip. So I put hashtag Molly in Finland, and it keeps that content alive. So that's something I've done. Yeah. This is... Oh, sorry. Then I went on to, obviously, after the trip, I was taking photos and videos the whole time. After the trip had finished and the live kind of feed on Instagram had stopped, I then go into edit mode. And out comes blog posts, YouTube videos, so this is an example of one of the blog posts. I go to town, so whilst people might have seen a little bit of the snippets and highlights on my Instagram, they wouldn't have known the details, they wouldn't have known, exactly the links to the hotels, a packing list of things you need for that kind of trip, blah, blah, down to the finest details. So I take pride in giving the finer details on my blog, which is in the middle here, you can see an example. And then on YouTube, I posted a full YouTube video, which is then embedded into the blog post. So in case someone hasn't had enough information and doesn't know what it's like, and they really want a feel of, again, what it was like there, perhaps they didn't follow the live feed on Instagram, they can come on the adventure with me in the YouTube video, and that one there is a bit of a vlog-type video. And then integrating as well the blog posts through my social channels. I do a swipe up on Instagram, and I obviously post it through to Facebook and Twitter. But this is an example of the template that I use on Instagram. So if people are watching my stories, they can swipe up and head to the blog post. Also, you can see here, navigation, as I said, is key. I've got a map. So using the categories at the top, you can go through destinations, adventure type, travel tips, etc., and you can also look at it on the map. So I wanted to maximize the navigation on my blog and make sure that if someone knows exactly where they're going, the city, the time of year, they can find that content as easily as possible. Again, YouTube, this is the video that I posted. And also, although I could have posted that on Facebook and embedded it into my blog, putting things on YouTube opens up a whole new audience, and that's so important when using and opening yourself up to different platforms. You access a wider audience completely. For example, you can type in Karelia, Finland on YouTube. Someone might not follow my blog, Instagram, socials, or whatever, but they might be going to this area of the world, and I've opened up my content to them by putting it on YouTube, because they can type that in, and I'm third down. For, I think, backpacking Australia and backpacking New Zealand, I traveled those 4 years ago now, backpacked, and I created GoPro videos, and I put those on YouTube. That drove a lot of my work for the first year of my career, because when you typed in backpacking Australia and New Zealand, my videos came up first. So that's a prime example of how using more than one platform can open to so many more readers and so much more work. So YouTube's been key for me, even though I'm not, an active every week uploader. And this is an example of Pinterest and the way it's displayed. If you haven't used Pinterest before, this is what Pinterest looks like, and this is what my pins look like. So not only do I pin the pin-friendly images, but also the images within the blog post, and they get repinned and repinned. And all of those, if you opened one and clicked on it, it would open up the relevant blog post that it came from. And same on Facebook. This is another way that I share the blog post. So not only do I create on my blog, but also I share it across. And this is how I do it on Facebook. I think, are we good for time? Yeah? Well, thank you very much for listening. I know that was a lot of information, and I kind of tried to not go on too many tangents. But I'm around afterwards, so if anyone has any questions of anything in particular that you'd like me to kind of expand on, then yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, go on, mate, go on. 10 minutes, 10 minutes. Well done.
I do have slides. Just give me a minute. OK. Content platforms. Quite a lot of the stuff I've got in here is quite similar to what Molly said, and I want to make sure we leave some time for questions. So if I fly through a couple of bits, it's not because I don't think they're important. It's because I think Molly's already said great stuff on very similar points. Just something that occurred to me there. Quick show of hands in the room. Who's active on social media or online? Pretty much everyone, yeah? OK. Who has Twitter as their most important platform at the moment? That's one, and he's lying. 5 years ago, that would have been about 70% of the room, certainly for influencers. So it's just something to consider at the start when you're looking at which platform to put a lot of your time into. Instagram might not be that important next year. It might not be that important tomorrow. Things can change very, very quickly. Twitter was huge when we started Traverse. Everything we ran was on Twitter and Facebook, and Instagram was an afterthought. Instagram back then was a social platform. Instagram essentially now isn't even a social network. It's a portfolio. It's where people put their work to show off what they're doing. Instagram Stories has taken over what Twitter did. Anyway, that's just something I thought of when Molly was there, so I'm actually going to get on with what I'm doing. This is what I am, Michael. Mac already introduced me, so you don't need to see that. First thing kind of to look at is why is influencer marketing effective? Because there are lots of different reasons. This is a quick quote. I hope the fast readers got that. I'll come back to it. I can give you all these slides afterwards that I emailed to everyone who's here, so it's fine. Brand awareness. If you're looking for amplification of your content, that's one of the main reasons people work with influencers across all platforms. SEO and traffic. So getting authoritative blog posts that link back to your brand can help your SEO. And you also own, like when that goes well, you own the organic search terms. A recent example we worked on a project last year called Spain Cities. We sent 10 influencers to 10 different cities. I think a few of them are here in the room. A lot of those blog posts they've written are ranking 1, 2, 3 on Google at the moment. That's a year on. And that's legitimate, authentic content that people are finding when they search. Not paid search terms, not Expedia trying to sell you a hotel. No offense to Expedia. Trust, authenticity, and reliability. People, a lot of them look at influencers as kind of halfway between a friend and a magazine. This isn't the Daily Mail online. It's not National Geographic. I know I shouldn't compare those two. I'm not meaning to. But what I mean is people really look at people like Molly, and people like Chloe and Paul and other people who are here as someone they know. A blog really is still, like when they're done well, in my opinion, It's still something that people are following that person, not just what they write. You want to hear about their stories. That's why Molly's channels, in my opinion, why they work so well is because they are so personal. It's Where's Molly? It's not got a different name to it. It's all about her, and it's about people follow her. People want to see what she's doing next, not just find an interesting article about the Northern Lights in Finland or dog sledding. But they find that, and they can look at how someone they know is enjoying that. So when you're starting to work on an influencer campaign, the first thing we say to every brand we work with, every single one, whether they're spending a tiny bit or a lot, is why do you want to work with influencers? We still get some people who say because it's the right thing to do, or because my boss told me, or because our rival's doing it. But really you need to define that, because that's what defines, or that's what should define everything from there, because there are lots of different reasons. As we just showed you, there's the SEO, authenticities, amplification. Amplification. Yeah, I just mentioned that one, so we can skip it. These are the different goals that you might have when you're working with influencers. To reach new audiences. This is a huge reason people do it. This is effectively what all marketing is. I know it's not all new audience. Sometimes you're just re-enhancing it. Everybody knows what Coca-Cola is, but they still advertise. But similarly, if there's a new drink, you know they're going to be doing exactly the same thing. Content creation for brands and destinations. So this is a hugely important part of working with influencers. There's obviously two types of content you can get, two main types. One's on their channel, and one's content for yourselves. We quite often work with influencers. Maka is one of the guys we worked with on a trip last year, where we can say, look, these guys have got exceptional talents outside of just running their own blog and their own video. So use that as well. So Maka went on a skiing trip, and part of what he did out there was create brand images as well. That they needed, the company we work with, they needed that to be done. And it saved them sending a photography team out there. Like two birds with one stone. It worked out that a better rate for the influencer and a much cheaper creation of good level content for the brand. That can be done with video, written content, social media, anything. And obviously influence, the path to purchase. This is what we all want really. It's why they're called influencers for the moment. They'll be content creators next year. So which platform? This is the part I'm going to just fly through quite quickly because Molly talked, and I'm very happy to see that she shares my views on it, because it would have been awkward if these are completely different. But YouTube, you know, YouTube's huge. Second biggest search engine in the world. I think it's the second biggest social media platform in the world as well. 1.5 billion logged in users a month. I use YouTube probably more than any other website. That's just personally. That's nothing to do with my work. I just like watching videos on it. YouTube also gives you the option, a lot like a blog post, that you have video which is owned by you. Essentially, you can own the content. People search it for the same reasons they'll search for an article. And again, you're reaching new audiences and influencing what they're deciding to do. Facebook. Facebook's the largest social media platform in the world. Second biggest website in the world by traffic, after Google, which doesn't, you know, depending what you want to make of that. However, something we'll see is that a lot of young people are leaving Facebook. That's not necessarily a bad thing either, because a lot of young people are not necessarily the ones booking expensive trips when it comes to travel, but they are a lot of people spending on more disposable priced products. That's probably the best way of saying that. Blog content, you know, as Molly touched on before, saying it's probably one of the most important ones out there. I would say probably the most important when it's done well, because it's lifetime. Like, it lasts for ages. You can get posts which are 5, 6 years old, which are still getting traffic. So an interesting thing to do today when you get the chance is go onto an Instagram account that you like, right? Some big Instagrammer, maybe who's working with loads of brands. Look at a post of theirs from 1 week ago today, and go back on that post a week from now and see how many more people have interacted with it, because it won't be many. As Molly said, it's instant. It moves along. I know you can't see the traffic to individual blog posts, but if you did the same thing with that, it would look incredibly different, because people are still going to be looking at it. And that's just a week ago. This can be 5, 6 years ago. Also, blog content, you know, you own it. As we mentioned before, you can own those rankings in Google. And as we've said multiple times, it has a long-term impact. Instagram is huge. It's not something we can ignore. For the moment. So, you know, engagement rates are, as I said, 15 times higher than Facebook, 20 times higher than Twitter. How many of those are real people and how many are automatic programs going, I love this, what a great feed. I don't know, something to look at, but it does have a high engagement rate. It's great for physical products in fashion and beauty, but it does tend to have a short-term impact. Molly said exactly the same things, but my opinion is people aren't going to book a cruise on an Instagram photo, but they will buy a pair of shoes. So look at what your products are. Instagram stories. I just put this in just yesterday saying, is it the new Twitter? Twitter used to be the place that everyone chatted with each other. Everyone had you'd post something and then you'd have these big conversations and you'd look at the tweets from last night and go, I don't remember that. Like, that was great. Oh, God, I had that drink and all that sort of stuff. That's what you do in Instagram stories now. Kind of for a while was Snapchat. I think certain places Snapchat's still got some reach, but mainly that's Instagram stories now. And again, even for brands, it's a great option, as Monica said, for that swipe up, have a look at this. Look at this thing I'm eating. People will go to a bar and buy a cocktail based on an Instagram story. And they'll probably go and read a blog post based on an Instagram story. Measuring. So what to measure? What do you want to look at to see if your campaign is working? There's lots of different things. Engagement. This is something that people look at first. It's also something that I often think, while it's very, very important on social media, isn't the be-all and end-all. As I mentioned before, engagement, like a lot of other things, can be faked. A lot of people on Instagram use comment pods, which is basically a way to get a load of comments quite quickly to try and cheat whatever algorithm people think they know about Instagram. So just because there's comments there and just because there's likes there doesn't mean that they're authentic, doesn't mean that they're brilliant, but it is something to look at. It's a number that we can all see. Sentiment is how people are talking about your brand or your destination. It's harder to measure, but it's brilliant to look at. You can do that with also, you can look at it on social media, look at it yourself. There's also a lot of brands out there that are not cheap, but they do this for you, and they can say, look, this is a positive, the negative. This is how people guess who's going to win elections, because they're looking at the different kind of views that people have on social media. Obviously, there's lots of other ways, but when people look at it for this and how, what's going to be more popular, a destination next year and stuff. A lot of it is by measuring the sentiment. As I said, it's a very hard thing to do just yourselves manually, unlike engagement, but there are companies out there that can do it, and they can do it really well. And obviously, traffic is a big thing when you work with influencers. It's something that you often want. Again, not the be-all and end-all. A lot of bloggers won't directly drive a lot of traffic. Certainly Instagrammers don't, because they have that one link and it's all the way back in their profile. And when you're looking at all their pictures, you're not going to go to that. But it is something you can measure, and you can measure it yourself, which makes it very useful. And of course, sales, which essentially is what we're all trying to do. Everyone's selling something to someone. Again, it's a hard thing to measure, but we're getting better at it. There are ways now of measuring, seeing when someone books their flight on Turkish Airlines to see where did they first see Turkish Airlines. And you can actually look at that quite accurately. And you might go, oh, look at that. It was a year ago on a blog post from Mecca. You've done Turkish Airlines? It wouldn't have been from Mecca, but still. So why you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket? Lots of key considerations. Look at the influencer's audience. Look at the demographics, the content. Basically everything Molly's already said in a lot more eloquent way than I am. But it is important to mix up the platforms that you're working with, essentially. So with the demographics, the influence audiences are critical to what you want. This is something that a stunning amount of brands I look at get so amazingly wrong. Look at who's using which platform. It's not that difficult to find this information. You can do a quick search and you can find out most of what's where. You're not going to sell to 75-year-old people on YouTube, right? I mean, in general, that's not the right place to put that product. It's why you don't see Saga doing sponsored posts on YouTube, but they do work with bloggers, because a lot of the older people booking they are going on Google, they are searching, but they're not going on Instagram and they're not going on YouTube. So just something to think about when you're starting to look at. Shelf life. If what you do is, or if all you're doing is putting it into Instagram, then it's going to be very short term. Perfect, as Molly mentioned, for when a brand has a sale on, or when you're doing a flash sale of a product, or when you want to do a last hit to try and get people to buy tickets to a concert or to come to World Travel Market, or anything that's, has a short term. It's brilliant for that, but it is short term on Instagram. Long-term traffic on the blog posts on YouTube, that's going to be better for when you're trying to sell a destination or a brand that's not changing that much. And obviously mixing these platforms works really well, and I'm hoping there is a case for one basket. Basically what I just mentioned, quick, cheap products. Instagram is amazing for selling sunglasses and watches, bracelets, shoes, anything kind of up to like £100. Someone might book that off a photo, but is anybody here going to spend £5,000 on a holiday of a lifetime based on one lovely picture? Probably not. But what you might do is look at that picture and go, that looks great. Let's go and check out what that person's written about on their blog, which is leading us onto a very quick case study I want to go through. We did a campaign this year with Princess Cruises. Molly was part of it, which makes it easy enough to talk about here. We sent 9 influencers on this cruise around Russia and Scandinavia. It's pretty amazing. I didn't get to go, which was a bit of a joke. 45 blog posts were created from this campaign, 120 plus Instagram images, 7 YouTube videos, 85 Facebook posts to pages. When I put in brackets to pages, I mean it's not Molly Bylet going on her personal page. Hey, I'm having a cocktail. It's on Where's Molly? Look at this. And obviously Instagram stories. ROI, as much as I love to shout about that number, take it with a pinch of salt. It's always very, very difficult to measure. This is what's come from the brand. We're very happy to see it, but I'm not going to pretend that it's an exact thing that you can measure. So hashtag there was discovered with Princess. I just wanted to bring up the top post. This was 2 days ago, just to give you an idea. 2 of the top posts are from Molly. There you go. And you can see the likes there. So as I mentioned, you look at that and you might go, I want to see more about this. This is the post. And then you can read about part of it on Molly's blog. I just scrolled down a little bit, so I'm not just showing you her map and her header, but also the fact that, this is looking at the food that you get on there. It's a lot more in-depth than other content. And then from that, you might look at what other people were on the trip. There was 9 people, and you end up with a video. I'm not going to play it. And this was from Amelia, who also went on the campaign with Molly. Overall, this is just one I wanted to use for you now because it's really recent. It was just a few months ago. So basically everything kind of comes together on that trip. There's also loads of tweets, some Snapchat, loads of other stuff that happened. And all in all, when people start by looking at a photo, they can then go through and think, oh, maybe I'm going to search for it. Blog posts come up. I want to see a bit more about it. I'll look at a video. And then eventually go, you know what, maybe I will book Princess. Or maybe they'll come back to it next year and they go, what was that thing I read? They can still read it on the blog. They can still find it if they look at the hashtag. This is one last quote to leave you with. I think we've still got a few minutes for questions that Mac is going to do. I'm going to leave that up to Mac, but thank you very much. I hope that was okay, so I had to rush through a little bit of it.
Come sit down, come.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate. Can we get the live feed up so we can obviously get some questions here, which is going to be amazing. I'm probably going to sit next to you just otherwise it's going to be a bit awkward. Guys, I know we're really short for time, 5 or 10 minutes. I always feel that the Q&A sessions are sometimes where you get the truth of the matter. We've got an amazing blogger here. We've got a brand here. So let's get into it. I don't know if you saw last night on WTM, they actually posted a little blog which titled, Digital Influencers Are Not Influencing Holiday Choices. I don't know if you saw, but apparently 78% of people don't believe that influencers are actually influencing anything. I guess both of you, what do you say about that? I mean, Molly, do you feel that you are influencing 100%. Your audience?
I mean, yeah, 100%. And just on Michael's last point, it's planting those seeds. I don't know how they're measuring that or what that's kind of backed up with, but even if you're not measuring it, I can guarantee by the comments that I'm getting, 2-3 years down the line after I've done a trip, that people are still booking those trips that I influenced and planted the seeds for back then. I mean, absolutely, I don't really know how to answer that in one sentence.
I think there's a couple of things to look at with that. One of them is that 22% of people are saying yeah. 22% of the people that WTM asked, WTM audience is not probably your typical, is this working still? Yeah, not your typical audience that might be looking at influencer platforms all the time. A lot of traditional journalists who would like to say no to that, to get that report out. Not saying that all journalists do, but there's still a bit of a divide there sometimes. I'm also wondering how seriously WTM take those numbers.
Yeah, for
because
sure,
I know
yeah.
the amount of work that they're doing with us at the moment shows that they still think there's a hell of a lot of value in it. I basically think it's bullshit.
Which, if you're an influencer here, I guess it's obviously wonderful to hear. One more quick question before we kind of start ask a few in the audience, because I'd love to get a few other people's opinions as well. I guess that there is going to be a lot of brands here, a lot of tourist boards. If they're going to come to you separately, say with £2,000, and it's not about putting all of your eggs into one basket, like where would you say that they should spend that money on, and how would you kind of run a campaign like that? Molly, let's go with you
So if
first.
someone came with a budget, how would I build it?
Yes.
Again, kind of like what I spoke about before, it depends on the product completely. So a brand comes to me and said, how much would you charge for this, this, and this? I don't have a set price for a set platform. It's completely bespoke to each brand. We build it from scratch. We look at their long-term, short-term goals. I look at where I think it will sit. It is mainly, I always incorporate Instagram, blog, and Instagram and blog, pretty much always. I always buffer it with Facebook and Twitter and put those posts in just to drive the traffic. And YouTube, for me, is, again, it's quality for me. So that's an extended part of a campaign that I can add on, but it's usually with an additional budget.
And Michael, as a brand?
Yeah, again, first thing is to look at the brand, look at their goals, ask them that. I would always try and go for YouTube or blog as the main thing. My opinion on Instagram is very much it's a great complement, but it's not really a great thing to focus on wholly. We very, very rarely work with people who are just Instagram. So I would probably look at what can be done as a way of working, if it's a smaller budget, so maybe one person who we call is like a great all-rounder, so good Instagram, good blog, good YouTube. If it's slightly bigger budget, or if they want to target more micro-influencers, then try and get a few people working on it at the same time. That's a great way of amplifying it. Again, I mentioned the Spain Cities thing earlier. 10 people all chatting, sharing stuff helps amplify it.
So would you kind of say that Instagram at the moment is vanity metrics? It looks amazing, but does it really create any bookings, which at the end of the day is what people selling a product, or trying to get people bums on seats to the country is what they want?
I don't think anyone's going to book a trip to Australia based on a photo of Uluru, but I do think people will buy a suitcase based on an Instagram page, so it all depends on your product.
And Molly, what is your opinion on Instagram at the moment?
I think it has, it's at a stage now where you have to be smart using it. I know I certainly think with every single post that I post, what am I delivering with this post? Am I trying to make people jealous about where I am? Am I trying to show off what cocktail I've got and the fact I'm doing it on a Monday morning, or not Monday morning, maybe Monday afternoon? So I do think some people's intentions, I think there's a lot of younger generation now aspire to be on social media and to have this platform and to do these amazing things and to get these amazing things and show it off. But I think the real value, especially in travel, is drawing it back and thinking about what are you selling? I'm selling a lifestyle. I'm not selling me. I'm not selling, oh, look at me, everyone like me. It's more, look at this product and weaving it in a really natural way that my readers particularly don't feel alienated by my posts. They don't feel like, oh my God, that image is so perfect. I wish I could do that. It's more, that looks really fun. And yes, it'll probably be of high quality on a high quality camera, but it's within reach. And I think that's the key, particularly with my Instagram, is that I want it to feel within reach, that my readers can go out and do that as well. And go and achieve those same things and buy the same things and still have the same experiences.
Cool, okay. I saw that someone in the audience was dying to ask a question near the front here. Is there any way we can get a microphone down to her? Is that possible? If anyone else has any questions in the audience, please just,
It was just, ciao everyone. It was just a consideration about the article that was published yesterday about the research at the WTM, influencer not influencing, which is actually was published. This research was actually published also on an Italian newspaper. So now in Italy there is a big talking about this. So it's not really bullshit, as you said before, Michael, because now I've got lots of people asking me, why are you working with influencers? WTM is quite a reliable source of information. So WTM published these articles, and now I got lots of questions about why you're working with influencers.
Okay. So I haven't had a proper chance to read this article, and so I'm going to go based on headlines and what people have said. I would be very aware of who they're referring to when they mention influencers, because I agree that most people who call themselves an influencer might not actually be influencing people. That's not really a surprise. To most people that call themselves an athlete playing the Premier League, of course not. It doesn't work that way. I do say I personally think Instagram does more bad than good for this industry that I work in, because it makes people think, oh, influencers, really? Why? Oh God, I'm an influencer. It does make it a bit of a dirty term.
I also think, I think on that particular article, it always depends on what the statistical analysis is. Like, if you ask 1,000 people over the age of 40 whether they're going to be influenced by influencers, they're probably not going to say yes. If you ask 15 to 25-year-olds whether they are influenced just by Instagram or even Snapchat, of course they're going to say yes. So I guess with anything, it's, take it with a pinch of salt. You've got a wonderful blogger here who says that influencers are amazing to work with. You've got a brand here who's been an advocate for the last 5 years, driving the industry forward of why brands should work with influencers. I think at the end of the day, we all do a lot of good.
There's good and bad in every industry, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. And as you say, you've got the case studies to prove it. Unfortunately, yeah, I think we've really come to the end of this. I'm getting waved at the back. So thank you very much. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess I've got to do another session now. So.
Okay. Guys, I really hope we could, honestly, I'm sorry, I know you want to ask a question. We could talk about this all day long, but I really hope you've enjoyed this morning's session at WTM with Michael Ball from Traverse and Molly Bartlett from Where's Molly. If you could give them a round of applause, please, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone.